Entrepreneurship
on 702.
15 minutes after 9 o'clock. Andisa Ramavhunga joins me now in studio. Andisa, thank you so much for joining me, my brother. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Aubrey.
I make the analogy. In fact, I don't even think it's an analogy, but okay, it's an analogy. That entrepreneurship is akin to hunting. What do you think of that?
Hunting is about creating value, right?
Right.
So that's directly translation of what entrepreneurship is. Because it's for some it's about we call it others will call it hustling, right?
Yeah.
But hustling has got a criminal connotation to it. So, I would prefer that we are hunters, but we are hunters with the mind of creating abundance that would subsequently lead to flourishing of nations, or of a community. If you're a social entrepreneur, like I guess myself that I am. So, but you're absolutely spot on.
Yeah. So we've asked you to tell your story, and perhaps part of that will involve the organization that you are part of the leadership of, Ntiyiso Consulting Group. And you'll choose as to how much you want to tell me and how much you don't want to tell me. But I want to start off by asking this particular question. You're an entrepreneur, that is undoubtable. Are you an entrepreneur? Are you a made entrepreneur, or were you born an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's very interesting because I think I'll tell a bit of a story. But before I do, Aubrey, I guess my interest in sharing my story with your audience is to sort of demystify what you and I have been talking about. If you remember our last conversation, we were accused, okay, maybe accusation is a bad word, but some words were thrown around to say, but this is MBA stuff. How does it help us, right?
I remember that question.
I sit here again conflicted because I think I am at heart, by the way, and it's something that I aspire to do. I'm a career academic, but I've not practiced as an academic. I think what I've just done is maybe get the necessary degrees that are aligned to my interest. But what I have practiced very well, I would not say very well, I'll say extensively in my last 20 odd years is entrepreneurship. And I've had then the privilege of mixing that academic background with studying of businesses. And not just this first business, by the way. There's, I think I did mention at some point that this is probably my fourth entrepreneurial venture. But I guess the greater point that I'm making or trying to impress upon people is that, this thing might look academic, what you and I talk about.
Yeah.
But to me, this is someone maybe saying, hey, this thing is painful. And I'm trying to demystify it to say, of course it is painful, but we've done it. Have we been perfect at it? No. We completely quickly learn, get ourselves, move on. And I hope my message and the story that I share with you today would zoom in into some of those aspects and give a personal account and view of it. What got us to start with them, how we grappled with them, what sort of challenges have we met on this journey? Where are we now, and what are we doing to counter? Because I think that will quickly help entrepreneurs to at least unpack those things for themselves, and also take comfort to say that these things have been done. I don't purport again to have done them to the best, excellent, but they've gotten us to a particular journey where we're comfortable with the business and we at least understand and acknowledge and are managing the moving parts. And I guess the essence of what we're trying today is exactly that, right? So you asked me a particular question around, am I a born entrepreneur? And I will tell you my simple story is I'm not. So I'm a township child. I was born in Katlehong. I won't mention my age, but safe to say that...
You're old. You're very old.
So in fact, I don't mind my age at all. So I'm turning 45 this year.
You're old. You're very old.
I'm turning 45. So I was born in 1979, a township child in Katlehong. I can tell you, if I can show you my pictures, and I always keep on pasting them to remind myself that I was a dusty child. If you understand those Kasi boys, dusty, playing from a 4-room, and I always tackle it to say these are the kids with no hope. I can tell you I was one of them. Although I'm the first to admit that I was probably more privileged than most. I mean, my dad was a railway man. My mom was a nurse. So that, by its design and consequence, meant that I come from what we would call a middle class type township, but still from a 4-roomed house, playing with other four kids. I have memories of using plastics to create a soccer ball and play. I have memories of not having a football and another child having a football and being expelled from because you're scoring too many goals and this is not your ball. So I have all of those, right?
Yeah.
Of playing with tires and all those things. So I'm saying that I'm a typical township child, right? With the similar tag that say I have no hope, right? But I put in that caveat to say that I had a privileged background in the sense of the parents that I had, so who instilled the education and invested in it. So you would argue that I was privileged. Privileged in the sense that I was able to attend a number of universities. I studied computer science and mathematics at Wits University. I went on to complete an MBA at Gibbs, but I've been a career management consultant. I guess maybe that's the caveat I'm trying to prove, to say I might not have been an entrepreneur, but my life lended itself that I started advising businesses, big businesses, at a very young age. Obviously, with my ranks in management consulting, I've done quite a number of, I would say, poster child type projects, right? The ones with the visible type. I'll give you one of them. One of them was the restructuring of the defense budget post the investment in the arms deal.
Really?
Yeah, it's about how to make it work. Now we've spent all the money, but how do we spend the little money to make it work? So I've answered all those questions. I've had a privilege.
They listened.
The staff. Yeah. So we've done quite a lot of stuff that really. I mean, I don't know whether they've done a lot of work, but a lot of that budgeting that went on was out of that work, right? There's stuff that you and I, when we spoke processing, I mentioned the ports. So I was part of a team, by the way, that decongested the port of Durban. This would have been in 2006. My particular role was in increasing ship to shore operations, where bottom line was probably about R1 billion or something like that, with very minimal capex. But it was really thinking about all these things of processing. So that's the experience I took into starting a business. Not to say that I did not make any mistakes, because starting a business is exactly that. It's born, my business, particularly Jenny, was born out of what I could do. So I was a career consultant. I think I could do this. So naturally, what I gravitated towards was starting a consulting business.
I want to stop there for a moment and say, the universal principle I'm picking up out of what you've just described, and by universal principle, is how do we learn and identify and relate to your experience?
Yeah.
So not all of us are necessarily career consultants. Yeah. Not all of us are career academics. Not all of us even have an academic inclination. Not all of us. But the point I'm trying to make is, or I'm trying to get to, is that you start where you are.
Yeah.
You use what you know.
What you know, yes.
You enter the entrepreneurial world with the experience and non-experience that you have.
Yeah.
Who you are at the moment of the decision to get into the entrepreneurial space is what you use, and it is sufficient?
No. So, but I'm saying we have to start somewhere.
Right.
I guess what I'm trying to say to entrepreneurs. So I did not even understand how big the consulting market is, right? And you understand I'm coming from this traditionally big consulting firm that naturally I'm competing with them, right? So the first thing I knew that, okay, I'm not going to play in that space, but I have a particular set of skills that I have confidence in myself to implement, to deliver that value. So I would find smaller gigs that will allow me to at least start getting a business going there. So
I want to stay there a little bit, because I don't want my listeners who have an entrepreneurial inclination or desire or to enter that space to think you have to be a consultant, or you have to be academically astute, or you have to be erudite in a particular space. I'm thinking of the guy who has been a panel beater, working for somebody all of their life, who's had the unction, the desire to start their own business one day. And what I want to say is that experience for that desire shouldn't preclude you from actually starting the process of going into that space.
In fact, it should give you the boldness and the courage to go into the space.
Right.
Because that's the start of everything.
I'm thinking about the lady who used to be a cashier at Pick and Pay, who happens to be somebody that cooks well.
Yeah.
Whenever there's a function at home, people call her. She loves to cook, but does not have the understanding of entrepreneurial principles, of strategy, but she loves to cook, and people have said, listen, we love your food. And from time to time, when there's amalobolo at home, people will ask her to cook the meal. When there is a wedding, people will ask her to cook a meal. When there's a funeral, people will ask her to arrange. And she's thinking, maybe I could go into business in as far as this is concerned. But I don't know these things. I suppose what I'm trying to say is that here you worked for consultancy firms. You had not yet become the entrepreneur yourself, but you had certain experiences in the field that you were in. Perhaps not enough.
Yeah.
But you decided to go ahead anyway?
To go ahead anyway, yes.
Right.
And it started, like I'm saying, you have to start with doing small, where you know that, or small projects, where I know that, if I get in here and start this little conversation, I'll be on my way. I'll tell you how I started. And by the way, I want people to realize that relationships are a big critical, of which something that, by the way, when I started, I had no skills of managing relationships. Remember, I was just a consultant and not even running a consultancy, but being one of the resources within a consultancy delivering as part of a group. You quickly realize that the people you meet are the ones who provide you with opportunities. I met a couple of people, by the way, who had contracts, who were willing to subcontract me to do stuff. Initially, I can tell you that was my business for the longest of time, just being subcontracted and doing. So other people were selling. I was not good at that, but because of the relationships I had, I started doing that. And my journey is quite exciting, right? Before I move and move on into the subtle nuance, because I'll tell you that I also started a TV business with a partner, which was outside of my now consulting forte, which was the first, I think, foray into now entrepreneurship outside the consulting space. But I want to make an example now, tangible example of a young man that I've known now for probably about a year or two, who sells clothes, by the way. One of the things, and I'm pushing him for that because I'm thinking we can help him do that. He sells clothes, but he also asks franchises to place people. They don't pay him because of the rapport he has with the owners. They'll ask him for stuff. And he's been getting a number of these things where people are saying, oh, but you are selling clothes. You are able to train people who sell clothes. Can you help us get people to sell clothes? I'm thinking that's a very opportune place to start a business, right? Because your business is not really about selling clothes, but your business is about spotting people who can sell clothes and putting them in retail shops. And then he quickly got into an arrangement with one of the retailers. I won't mention, but they run huge franchises across big malls, and he's doing that as a side hustle. But I'm saying, but this, you've now gotten a starting pad. You can replicate this by getting other, because this is obviously a worthwhile skill if you understand that area, by the way, of high churn, of high, you are well placed to become that go-to guy. Not to do a body shop, you can and argue, and I don't want to start getting into the business model to say maybe you can find people, or ultimately you can become that one go-to stop shop that supplies retailers on trained people who are able to deliver a perfect service. But I thought I should mention that because that inspiration is everywhere. Yeah. You've mentioned Umama, upheka kamnandi, wonke umuntu uyamazi ukuthi upheka kamnandi. What stops that lady from saying, okay, but can I supply you with meals for a week? Let's see how this thing pans out. Even if you buy the ingredients, I'll do them for you. At some point, charge you a fee. And if there are a lot of people who are like that, by the way, you'll see that the natural affinity is that, hey, let's buy her food. It starts there with your immediate circle and where you can...
Relationships.
Yeah. So when I went into my media business, I was not yet obviously fully exposed to this notion of value propositions and that
MBA stuff.
Yeah, that stuff we call it. and what value are you creating from? But I'll tell you. So my business partner who went there is probably, well, I won't mention his name, but look, he's not the academic guy. In fact, he's a hustler, but some of the most brilliant thinking I've seen there. And I'll tell you, when we went into TV, we already identified an unfulfilled niche in the market. Quickly went in to say what value proposition can, and that one was very simple. We were trying to create a black Mnet. I'm talking now 2009, 2008.
Right.
We're trying to create a black Mnet. If you remember Mnet at the time.
Right.
How glossy it was. Exactly like that, but for blacks. Okay. Who does that talk to? So there's a huge market of these aspiring middle-class black people who don't have sufficient content speaking to them. And what does that content look like? We started designing that content, and we started that television business, and it's still going even today. But when I reflect on that journey, I think it was on that foray, because most of the time there, I think with the work I was doing was a lot of business planning. I was doing a lot of business plans. We submitted to the SABC and eventually started doing some work with MultiChoice, where even that business has started. So some of the thing was highly strategic stuff. I mean, I remember designing people call it MBA, but it was a competition matrix. This is where now my mathematics and thing comes in. Something that says, how do we invest the money that we have? What type of content? When must it fly? Must it fly at 5? Who else is from other channels, by the way, would compete for eyeballs with us? Right. Already I'm going into the competitor analysis space. I might not have been aware of it then, but I'm mentioning this point to say that a lot of the stuff I think I started doing without even the knowledge of this MBA that I've come to curate and package and make very well. So park that. So strategy and planning, I think, has always been at the center of whether I was implicitly or implicitly not aware of it. Yeah. But planning and networks have always been the crux of that career.
I want to tell you that I've invited people to call in and ask questions as we continue. And we've already got a few calls coming through on 011-883-0702. By the way, Andisa Ramavhunga is Group Chief Advisor at Ntiyiso Consulting. We are just going through his journey as an entrepreneur to just get a sense of what has he gone through to come to a point where he is, I suppose, an active entrepreneur. He's very humble. He'll say that he is But take it from me, he's not doing too badly. 011-883-0702, the humble man that he is. But I'm looking to find out from you, what are your curiosities around entrepreneurship, listening to Andisa's journey? And I want to keep reminding you as you listen to this conversation that we're not all consultants. Not all of us have degrees. Not all of us are in that kind of business space. But there are principles that are universal to all of us that we see in Andisa's journey. You have to have relationships. You have to start where you are. You are probably not going to know everything about the area in which you want to be an entrepreneur in, but you got to start. I want to say also, just before I take these calls, that I fervently believe that the big conglomerates, the big corporates and government is not where the jobs are going to be created. I fervently believe that. I believe that they simply can't. And that space of creating jobs and opportunities is going to come from entrepreneurs like you. And so for me, it is something that is not only important, but it is critical. It is critical that we start to be entrepreneurial in the way that we see the world, so that we can create those economic opportunities not only for ourselves, but for everybody else that may not be employed by the big corporates, and sometimes people think government. I want to take some calls. Can I take some calls?
Yeah.
Let's take some calls. Kagiso is in Kempton Park. Hi, Kagiso.
Hi. Great show, man.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. Go ahead. What is your question or comment?
Wow. I find myself in Andisa's position currently, right? In the corporate I'm employed, I'd want to say I'm one of the best guys that does this thing.
Nice
right?
one. Yeah.
Now I find now the clients now approaching me now on the side. You see. And now I want to ask Andisa, at what point then do I say, look, let me shut all my fears, because these clients are after me now. I find myself now having to do this thing under carpet, you see. And I don't want to do that. And I see that my potential is great, because all the good guys that they want me to do their thing, right? But I want to do it now on my own. Mm-hmm. It's a big industry, and I'm at this point where now I'm saying, should I jump and go out to the cold and just do this thing and leave my security out the window?
Yeah.
And Andisa, I'm there now. You know, two guys got two big contracts right now, and they're saying, my man, come help us, come work with us. You see.
Kagiso, let's hear what Andisa has to say, yeah?
Sure.
Before you answer that, Sian on the WhatsApp line says, Aubrey, you're sitting with a very smart and articulate creature there. He reminds me of a group of fellows I studied with at UP, Princehof campus in 2015. I remember Princehof campus. In 2015, who were on KwaZulu-Natal Health Department bursary program. Surely not only in medical science exists brilliance, from Sian Ineguruleni Tembisa. Absolutely. And that's why I'm saying to you, Sian, and to all of the listeners, that in whatever area of interest you find yourself, there is the potential for brilliance right there. The mama who cooks well, the guy who is able to fix a car, there is room for brilliance right there. Let's talk to Piri and Alex. Hi, Piri.
Good evening, bro. Ops. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very inspirational there. I work in an office, bro Ops, like an accountant with 3 other guys, and every month end we are all broke, towards the month end before we get paid. We're all broke. But every now and then we'll talk about the fantastic ideas that we have on how we can be able to make things on our own. But for some reason, we just don't go out and make it. I think fear is one of the things that really dominate us in, trying to go out. Which is like, oh, okay, so if I don't make it, then what's going to happen to me? But what I wanted to ask your guest, perhaps as well, is the importance of formal education. How important is it for one to become an entrepreneur? Because I have a brother here in Alex who is running a nice spaza shop. He's doing fairly well. He's got a lot of customers that come in every now and then. He's doing his own fish and chips and quarters on the side. So he's pretty well, but he does not at all have a formal education. In fact, he left school at grade 11. But I want to ask, how important is it that one should be educated in entrepreneurship or in any other field, for that matter, to become?
Piri and Alex, much appreciated. Kagiso and Piri, our callers, your thoughts, Andisa?
Yeah, no, those are brilliant questions. The first caller, I think he was asking, at what point do
I jump?
Do you jump? It's I cannot have an answer for that, right? But all I can tell you is that it all starts with a leap of faith. At some point you have to jump. I'll tell you, the first time I jumped, I also did not have a salary. There was a point, I don't know whether Zotibeng Petwa Madluz, but I literally jumped and said, look, I'm gonna do this. Okay, my situation is a bit different in the sense that I was from employment. I could cash out things like retirement funds and all those things, and a bit of savings that would say, okay, how long will this journey take me? Of course, I took a very big knock, right, for sustained points of time where this thing tends. But you'll never have a perfect opportunity. That it's not going to come, because I know a lot of people is, okay, if only I can get this much money, or if only I can raise this much funding, that's when you start. The reality is no one wants to fund. I mean, even if you were to look at people like SIFA, the ones who fund franchises, they will tell you the first thing, we don't fund people who don't operate or who are not moving full-time into those franchises. Because if you think about it, no one is willing, if you are not willing to put in the time, no one should really be investing in your business. So you have to assess for yourself what the leap of faith is. However, that said, you can de-risk. And when I say de-risk, I'm not saying you're going to have 0% risk, right? I'm saying you can limit the number of risk. And
manage the risk.
Manage the risk. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about our caller now, and it will come, and I want to touch to the partnerships as well, because that's a very critical. I said there's networks, there's also partnerships, but we will come back to that. To say when he's working for a company that's losing clients and clients are coming to him, and he's feeling right now that he can't, isn't that an opportunity for him to go to that big boy and say, guys, this is what's happening. Can't we spin another form? I'll give you a shareholding in it, and let's make this thing work. The guys want to work with me. The market is big.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, now I'm seeing, or fortunately for me, unfortunately for you, I'm seeing this opportunity. But because you are my employer, let's go at it together.
We need to have a conversation about showing up. I started that conversation yesterday about showing up.
Yeah.
Showing up for what? Showing up for the opportunity that is presented to you, and how to understand the language of opportunity.
Yeah.
My grandfather used to say that opportunity always disguises itself as adversity.
Yeah.
And I think coded in what you've just said now is that it is always going to look like adversity.
Yeah.
And you need to be in contact with yourself to the extent that you understand your appetite for risk in that particular adversity.
Yep.
Dos Santos asks, Evening Orbs, please ask your guest what makes the majority of small business fall before reaching the same level of security. Before you answer that question, I want to have this conversation about our reverence for credentials, which I think can sometimes be the thing that keeps us away from showing up. So had you been a little irreverent, had you not been irreverent about the fact that you were not an owner of a consultancy yourself, that you had never run your business, had you not been a little bit irreverent and say, I'm going to do this anyway, you probably wouldn't have started to begin with.
No, absolutely.
Had the fact that Piri's friend, who's running a successful spaza shop there, selling kotas in Alexander, been irreverent, had he been too reverent about the fact that he doesn't have a formal education, he probably wouldn't have taken that opportunity. And he probably wouldn't have been looking after his family as he is right now.
Yes.
I really want you to underscore the issue of showing up by being irreverent to credentialism. Because I think that is a big part of entrepreneurship. You've got to be irreverent, I suppose, to certain credentials in order for you to take up the opportunity.
Yeah, so, I always say, and I'm sure I don't want to regurgitate foremost leaders, you have to be almost stupid, right? You have to be almost thick. And have this overly confident sense of optimism, about the future, because I guess that's what entrepreneurs are. I'll make my journey personal, for example. I mean, one of the things I knew that I was fairly good at was consulting, right? So when I left, I said to myself, I have a couple of options. I can give this a go, but I always had this almost like an unjustified sense of confidence to say, no, I can always come back if this thing fails. It was not guaranteed, by the way. In fact, if you look at the bloodbath, this is now pre-financial crisis, right?
Yeah.
When jobs were not available and everything was taking a tank. But I took some calculated risk, and the fundamental underlying part was that I can always come back and consult and go back into the in fact, I held that notion as one of, let alone the money that I had, which probably ran out very quickly. The notion that says I can always come back and consult. Oh, fine. We started a TV business. There was a little bit of income there, but that thing was lingered long. Even when I clubbed with partners to start this particular concern, I probably had that notion for a good 10 years before I let go of it, to say, hey, I've come to a point of no return now. If I was to ever go back to employment, I'll be undermining my journey. So, but I guess you are right when you say you have to be like very thick-skinned. I call it a leap of faith. And one of the things that I also emphasize, you have to have confidence in something, even if that confidence is fooling yourself, right? You have to believe in something, right? And I'm not, by the way, any saying that you don't have to think your choice is true, right?
Sure.
Okay, one of the other choices, by the way, our listener has is to say to those guys who want to employ him, guys, give me a contract or a letter of undertaking. Let me go raise funding based on this, on the supply chain, and I can mess up those relationships and move on. But all I'm saying is that you have choices. It's up to you to say, what sort of a person are you? What are your values? What sort of spectrum of decision making do you take into confidence your current employer and say, guys, let's build this value together, knowing that now you've got an upper hand? Or are you so afraid of having those conversations that you are willing to upset the apple cart and break away and mess up those relationships? Or you are somewhere in between where you are stuck with the fear, or you can't make a decision? The choices are there, are available.
Let's talk to Gwazi in Rudaport. Hi, Gwazi.
Hello. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Gwazi, what's on your mind, sir?
No, there's nothing. I'm not gonna say so much. I think I agree with Andisa. By the way, I've known Andisa when I was still at Ntiyiso. And God, there's so much that I've learned from the three guys. You know, the leap of or taking a chance. I remember at some point they were running a course, and I look at the three guys. I'm like, God, we are reaching South Africa with this, you know. But I want to own my own business one day. And I remember telling Alex that. And I'm glad to say I'm one of the few that Ntiyiso has inspired to have their own business. I mean, today I have my own business. In the debt recovery, I do a bit of some things that I'm not going to mention on the show. Employed 12 people within a space of a year.
Nice.
I think that is, I follow your show, Aubrey, or Andisa will tell you. It's just that I don't call. But today, because I'm hearing where you started,
Yes.
and I can relate with everything. Fear is always there, but if you keep on fearing, you will never achieve your dream.
Gwazi,
Right.
let me stop you there, my brother, so that we can take some more calls. I appreciate your
Okay.
call, and thank you for calling in. We appreciate it. Gwazi in Report. I want to stay there a little bit. I really want to stay. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Because I wanted to address this question around the formal education part.
Yes,
because this is, I think, where I think people miss out the most, right? I would say the most important thing is learning, not so much education. I'm not sure whether I'm making sense.
Yeah, it make a lot of sense to me.
For those of you who read, you'll understand, if you read and understand what made Steve Jobs. By the way, he went out of formal education, but that does not mean he stopped learning. He says one of the critical things I could do when I stopped going into class, I could now visit Stanford, where I used to study, and pick the courses that interested me. So he went to a course on computing, but more importantly, he started going to the courses around art and design. And that's why we have these products that are beautiful today. Because he stopped going to school, by the way. He has no degree, but he did not stop learning. And learning happens in every form or shape. What we are trying to do, you and I, Aubrey, is present that learning and inspire people to have an appetite to dig in information and dig in knowledge. I would like to say education is a universal right, and you have to seek it. And if you stop yourself because of this formality, you want a degree, I think you would have missed the essence of education. In fact, I don't want to push some of my colleagues, but you get a lot of people with very formal degrees who can't do anything with them, right? And yet you get people who have no formal degrees, but can do quite a whole lot. The question is who learned more out of that. The question is always align yourself with people who impart knowledge. Always read. Always be curious around and to be self-aware about things you know and things you don't know. And when you don't know things, seek that knowledge. It's sometimes residing in books. Sometimes it's residing in mentors. Sometimes it's residing in television shows, by the way, where you can just watch.
So just listen to the Aubrey Masango show, you know?
Aubrey Masango So no, I think let's demystify that, Aubrey. So yeah, I wanted to also talk about the issues of partnerships, because I learned a lot in my partnerships as well, because those are things that probably we don't think about when we are entrepreneurs, right? Because part of, again, these colleagues are raising questions. If there's some gap of knowledge that the Spicer guy does not know, you can always get a partner with that knowledge you augment it, right? The other gentleman who wants to start can always get a partner. But what at least I have learned with my journey with Ntiyiso, it's important to choose the right partners.
Yeah.
I cannot underscore that. I'll tell you, I think we only started having contracts with my partners now, probably, I would argue, maybe 10 years into the business. So there was a 10-year gap, and I stand corrected, where we
just worked on the basis of trust.
of trust. Even the documentation, by the way, I'm the first to say that it's as a result of us scaling, because we can't be telling people to have contracts and we don't have contracts ourselves. And I can tell you, we argue candidly. And no one will say, oh, okay, what does the contract say? We still maintain that sense. So I would say it's very important, one, to embark on a journey to find partners, but don't only do that. Think very carefully about the partners. And there's a couple of things you can do, right? You need to align on the value system. You have to understand. But by the way, that requires you understanding what is it that you really value, because you'll quickly see where you are misaligned. If you value delivery and another person values money, okay, you'll push that partnership. But the moment that there's money and we have not delivered, that partnership will be tested. And I think we've seen a lot with businesses that happening. I'll tell you what made our partnership with the guys, I think, was as mentioned. We quickly realized before then, and I see we're running out of time because this is a fascinating story, around what is it that we valued. This thing that says a business must have a vision and a purpose. Yeah. By the way, that's what aligned us at the very beginning. And I can tell you the mistakes we made, right? We faffed around with it a lot. I remember sometimes we had these grand message slogans that we even the three of us could not articulate. Remember, but it was our attempt at articulating our vision. I think that's maybe the more important. We knew exactly inside what it meant. Well, we subsequently changed it, and the reason why, by the way, we changed it is not because we did not believe in it, but we wanted to simplify the language that we use to enroll other people into the organization. So, and I know people will say this is MBA, but these are the pinnacle, I would say, or the nuggets of how to get a partnership to work. And more importantly, how to then start expanding the business. Because you appreciate when we started this partnership, there were only three of us, and we were all doing delivery work. And we quickly needed to get people in, and it was quite important that we enroll them into this mission. And again, getting more people to work. One of the fundamental mistakes we did was not so much maybe I would say minimally vet the people, but also not having a clear sense enough of the definition of the roles and the responsibilities of those people. Because of our growth and where we were, one of the things is what are the things we would have changed? I think we were very clear back then what our vision and purpose was. We were also very clear about the work that we needed to do to deliver on that. You remember the work to be done, and I'll come back to the business model because there are some learnings around it. But we're very clear about what it takes to deliver quality work. But where we did not do that very well is to define it on paper and use it to enroll the next person. And we paid school fees. I mean, the quality started sagging. Or at least we're still in the business, so there were no major. Okay, sometimes there would be, sometimes not. But it took a lot of pain and cleaning and regurgitating, or what do you call this? The chain of people coming in and coming. Obviously, some stayed because they had those core values. Fast forward to now, where we have quite a huge a business, and we are still grappling with some of these issues. I'm saying, had we put in the necessary filters, because we knew what they were, and that's why codification, I have always said to entrepreneurs, codification starts when you are alone. It does not start when there's 2, 3, 4 of you. It starts when you are alone. If you were to ask me, those are some of the things that I think we would have done much, much better.
Andisa Ramavhunga, I've got to stop you there because we've run out of time. But Danny Mitane says, Evening Orbs, in 2010, I identified solar and renewables energy's growth in our country. After much research, I took a leap from my comfy ventilated office career and invested in everything. Company registered, Exco, and compliance is done. Went overseas and got strong networks. Then our country's politics and bureaucracies stifled everything. Up to now, one is barely surviving. Government gatekeepers are our business biggest problems, not creativity nor the market, says Danny Michane. We need to continue with this conversation.
I think definitely.